right, let's work out we're going to work out, last week we talked about infinite games versus finite games. And part of that was inspired by part of what makes the community that you and I are creating effective, I think, at least in our theory here, is that it's more than just talking about the purpose we want to leave. It's having a container and a structure that helps us take action on and move forward the very difference we want to make in the world, the legacy we want to leave. And we use the word project for that. What's a project of purpose for that? But how do we create that? Is kind of the conversation here. How do we create a project?
Yeah. And the challenge for me, Chris, is the impossibility of thinking about it. Like my brain breaks in thinking about, okay, we'll just use legacy as the linguistic container for this, because that's what we're doing here. But okay, so if I'm going to think about my legacy in terms of my children, the life they get to live, the world in which they live in, a difference being made with people being safe and feeling loved in the world of, is expressed in terms of domestic violence and the opportunity that people have to, be free in their lives in that particular arena is an important arena to me. And looking at some of the global issues of the day, from global warming to poverty and homelessness and hunger. Right. And having a dent be made in those things on a, local level. I can think about that in terms of a legacy. That's all conceptual. And now we're talking about, okay, well, we're inside there's a couple of things that I can't get my head around that I wanted to use this call to sort of work out. One is, all right, if we're going to develop an infinite game around that, or if that is an infinite game, if that is already, that's a game that really is not out to be, maybe that is a game that's out to be won, but we're talking about creating finite games within infinite games, I think. Yeah.
And just on that thing you just said, like an infinite game, its goal is not to be won. Its goal is to keep playing, like to keep bringing agency to the far reaches of the world and the universe. You couldn't get that done in this lifetime.
Right. Good. So then there's this. So good. So then we're talking about creating inside that world, right, of people having agency and all the different expressions of autonomy and agency and self-direction and fulfillment that they could have inside that world. All right. What's an expression of that over the course of the next 10 years? Where would I be 10 years from now if that were the case? And then 3 years and then benchmarks for that. And I was just grappling with, it's damn near impossible for me to think that way. To put edges on it. 10 years, I'll be 70. Which is fucked up.
Wow. That was a double take on that.
Right.
What?
Just I don't even know what that means. I don't get it. I can't get my head. I can't get around that I'm 60. I'm what is it? The 10th? Yeah. I'm 20 days from being 60 or 22 days from being 60. So, I'm giving you the date so you can send me something.
Yeah. Thank you.
70. What is it? So just that in and of itself. Okay. And the bringing of reality to, and really this is what we're grappling with, because while these calls are pleasant, without that kind of reality, they are coffee talk, hey, this is my Tuesday morning chat with Chris. And that was what we were out to, I don't know, avoid, but
right. Well, yeah, we don't want to, I like talking to you too, and I feel like there's something, the game that I want to play, and I think the game you've been playing for a long time is let's make an impact in the world. And so, let's see what we can do with it. Let's see what we could do. And so that's the game we've been playing. It's not just coffee talk. It's
right.
What anyway, so
yeah, Chris, it's good because just I noticed something, right? Just my putting the number on it, right? Like saying 70.
Yeah.
Okay. It was impossible 60 seconds ago that I could get my head around it. And now I'm like, yeah, okay. 70. And this is that world we had started to talk about it in terms of, I think this is even Bill Gates said this is, although a lot of people say things like this, is that we underestimate what we can do in 10 years and overestimate what we can do in one.
Yeah.
And because of the I think the bias, the cognitive bias there is our inability to think in compound interest in the difference that compounding small actions make. So we don't think about the difference one small change over 10 years would make added up. Like if we just walked, an extra 100 steps a day. Yeah. That we don't think that that's going to make the difference. We have to do 75 hard. That was the joke, right? We were telling them earlier. Like we have to I got to do 75 hard. That's going to make the difference. And it might, I mean, you're doing 75 hard. God bless you. It's fine. And I'm not saying it won't make a difference. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm saying we have it's easier to think this one massive change right now. Yeah. Is going to make a bigger difference than walking 100 extra steps every day for 10 years. And statistically, evidence, hard data, the difference, it's why compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. People don't get it. And we can't, it's not like people don't get it because they're stupid. No. Our brains are not, that's not a design function of our brain to live in that. It's not we don't need compound interest to survive. Yeah. You need quick, massive change to survive. But well, what I might add to that is I think even more than how our brain is wired, I think it's just a generational game we've been born into, that there is a predominant finite game the world is playing. Everybody's born into that game, and your ability to think outside that game is a new muscle. Like you have just as much ability. If you're an alchemist, if you're a spiritual being having a physical experience, you have all the capability to think whatever you want to think. But when you live inside the fishbowl called a finite game of business, where it's all about measures and winning, you're trying to get a result in as quick as a time frame as possible, and that's not the same game. Right. So I think when you're sharing, like one of the things that comes up for me is if you listening to this, or you, Aaron, or me, whatever, if you bring a measure into the thing too soon, you bastardize the heart of it. You separate yourself from the heart of it, and you limit your connection to the very thing that would pull you forward, like the very thing that would help you wrap your head around it. You can't see it because you wrapped a measure around it too soon. Yeah, this is such a wild thing to get. It seems like cracking the code on this would be miraculous, because without a measure, it's just talk. Yeah. Right. If you don't have a measure, you're just talking. There is nothing, if you're going to make a difference in the universe, you need to be able to, a difference means it was this way, now it's this way. You got to be able to measure that difference somehow that needs to be measured. And yet if it becomes about that measure, right, you're saying too soon. I don't know that the temporality of it makes the difference, like when you put it in, but the weight it's given or the focus that it's given is, I think the issue is that if you focus on that, versus the end, if you keep the future present, right, and but rather than having being about the measure, that's a wild thing to manage. I think I think when I say too soon on that, on the measure thing, for example,
at some level, you have to let your vision germinate. You've got to let it develop. And I can't tell you how long that's going to be, but in your impatience to get going on a project and having a placeholder of agency as I'm using you as an example, agency as sort of the direction I'm headed, and your impatience to get clarity on how you want to play that game and what you want it to look like, you're like, well, fuck that. I just got to put a measure on it and start somewhere and go.
Right.
Which in some ways gives you a 75 hard game to play in the short term about agency, but you're like, what the fuck am I doing this for?
Right. Totally.
So that's what I mean by too soon. I don't mean like, I think once you get the heart of the essence of, which I think we talked about last week, essence, tipping point, map, and a plan. Once you have the essence of it, of agency, and you go, okay, well, what's the tipping point number that energetically would shift the world for agency? You go 1 million. We said everybody would say 1 million because that's the new number, 1 million.
Right. It's a good number. It's fine. And it seems infinite. It's as likely to be infinite as anything, and yet, it's a number you can. It's beyond this lifetime. 1 million would be beyond your lifetime. So you go 1 million. That's great. And then you marinate in the essence in 1 million what? 1 million what? 1 million souls doing what? There's a place where you got to kind of figure out, like, you're Picasso and there's a canvas in front of you. You're an artist. And you sit there and you look at your medium and you go, what does this want to be? And you just be with it until you get I know what I want to create now. I know what I want to do. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it. I don't exactly know the time frame of it. I'm not even exactly sure how I'm going to measure it yet, although I'll figure that out too. But at least now I have a sense of what the final piece is that I'm working towards. Yeah. And that's what most people cut off to. So they never get to that point before they put a measure on something. They never get to the million and the marinating and a million what? They never get to 1 million what? They don't get to the container. They don't have a vision of the thing they want to paint. They don't really even ask it, what does this want to be? They just kind of like, they don't even know what they're partnering with beyond themselves. And so the reason you can't. Whoa, hang on. That is a sentence I need to unpack. Okay. They don't know what they're partnering with besides them, outside themselves. Yeah. Okay, you say it like, well, I just said what I said. What are you, dumbass? How many more ways can you say that? You better find 60 more ways to say that, because that's an unbelievable sentence. They don't know what they're partnering with outside of themselves. So I don't know what I'm say that a different way. Great idea right there. Let's assume that legacy work is something bigger than yourself. We can just start there, right? Yes. Like, you could not get this done on your own. Right. Well, whatever this is. And that's what you're saying, that we don't take the time to. Yeah. You don't even know. So most of us like subject ourselves to a container that's far too small for a legacy, let alone our interest or our curiosity. Because I'm interested. I just know I'm speaking for me, because I notice where I'm looking to see is what can I get done in 10 years? Yep. And that's what, that's exactly what you mean. Yep. I'm not partnering with anything. I can't see anything outside of what I can do in 10 years. And I can't see getting shit done in 10 years. I mean, relative to the project, relative to the difference I want to make. Right. So I'm going to just make up some bullshit. Yeah. I'll get close. I'll move toward that. Right. Yeah. Right. Which I really, in this moment, what I'm feeling is that's really indicative of a finite game. Like the programming of a finite game says you got to figure out, and if not 10 years, the next 5, the next, we get so hyper focused on a result in a particular time frame that we can't be with what is the thing that would be worth my time and curiosity that would live beyond me. So that's part of it, is the partnering with something beyond you, is that there is something that would require more than just you to get it done. I also think that statement has to do with, and this is where you and I can go into the woo-woo woods, which I really love, that if you believe that we are consciousness having a physical experience,
that there is something we are, if you really want to go here, we're entering an age of Aquarius. Like we came out of an energetic phase that was all about, production, and we're moving into a renaissance, I think, of consciousness where new narratives are coming forward in very fast fashion. Like things are coming fast, new perspectives, new paradigms, new things. And where does that come from? I think that there is a partnership, a partnering with something beyond us that is not physical. I think that there is I love Abraham Hicks because I really feel like we're on the cutting edge of consciousness. I feel like we manifested in physical form to move something forward because we could.
All right. First of all, if we don't have a book called Into the Woo Woo Woods, why are we bothering? Why are we even here? I mean, period. Okay.
Yeah. Period.
End of conversation. Little Red Riding Hood, and there's a wolf, and I see the whole picture, and it's Into the Woo Woo Woods. Okay. That's 100% our future.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's funny because you're talking about things without form. You're partnering with something without form. Your partner, that's what you really do have a specific meaning when you say partnering with something outside of ourselves. You really do what you're saying is, and this is what I'm hearing you say is, we're talking about partnering with something outside of something larger than ourselves, something larger than what we our identity and what we can see. And that thing that's outside of ourselves is where what Abraham Hicks would distinguish as the universe, as where we came from, as
higher self.
And that there's a tipping point in creating a tipping point of people connected to that realm and connected to that reality where they're pulling that information and that action from who we really are into this reality, from who we really are out there into this reality here.
Yeah.
You're just that age of Aquarius space. That's okay. But that's articulating something that I've literally never heard you articulate. It's incredibly powerful. And I really do dig it. I really do think it gives form to something formless like that. It's like that.
Can I add? Can I add to that? Do you have a second? Okay, so I think part of
got a second.
I
got a call I gotta make.
I felt like you might want to go somewhere, and I was like, let me just insert something here because I feel like if we looked at your heart and passion, your conviction for agency, there's something spiritual to me about your connection to that vision. That's not about Aaron. That's not for Aaron. Your hope that people experience agency is not some goal you have, an income goal for you. There's something ethereal, something conscious about that thing. Now let me make up a story about it. If the story was Aaron as a speck of consciousness was floating in a cloud before he incarnated in this lifetime into the woo-woo woods, he sat up there, he's like, you know what? Hold my beer. I'm going to go down there and I'm going to be a stand for agency.
Right.
Maybe that didn't happen that way. I don't care. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, here you are on the cusp of a life's work, on the cusp of a journey of impact that you'd say, this is my cutting edge contribution to humanity in this short lifetime that I have.
Yeah, totally.
And you could say that is a desire of all consciousness, that people would experience agency. And that is beyond Aaron. The desire that humans experience consciousness is something you're partnering with that is beyond you.
Good. So then we're really talking about in creating whatever kind of project that might be used as a vehicle for this conversation with the community listening and people engaged in this. Is, first of all, that level of thinking needs to have been done. That's what you mean by too soon.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, good. Before that level of thinking is done.
Yeah.
And I can hear now, Chris, what you're pointing to is with throwing numbers on it or putting measures on it before that's done is actually a way of avoiding doing that thinking. It's, I don't have to think about what I'm partnering with outside myself because I have this measure. Let me get this handled now. Okay. That's super rich. Okay. That's just really great. And so I didn't really realize I know how woo-woo I am. We're connected on a whole nother level today. This episode better be called Into the Woo-Woo Woods. But but the real power here, Chris, or not, I don't know, the real power, I don't say that, but there's something very powerful about getting that distinguished as the heart of something, because they think it's people like us do things like this. The people like us just got narrower.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, that's a defining niche defining characteristic. You have to be interested in the woo-woo woods to be in this conversation. It's not something else, it's not this, that, or the other thing.
Because otherwise what happens is you end up creating a game that's a finite game. I feel like an infinite game lives in the woo-woo woods.
Yes, I hear you completely. Or inside the other language that we've been using is, without outside the force field is the woo-woo woods, right outside the force field of business, right? If you're not going to dwell in that which makes a difference for life,
right,
and acknowledge that there's something to connect to bigger than yourself, not just a purpose, but like a space, a universe, higher consciousness, whatever you want to say about it, that you're connecting to, and that your purpose, your essence is somehow being drawn from that. And the tipping point is the tipping point where in which that essence gets fulfilled, realized here, manifested here. And you're going to dwell in that. Then the question really what's the step beyond essence, behind tipping point? What's the map? Right. So the map then becomes how do you, what's your guide? What's your path?
Right. How are you going to get it done? Like,
how are you going to get that done? But keeping that present and keeping the essence present, keeping that space alive here in the current reality is the key. And I can totally get what you were saying about doing it too soon.
Yeah. I remember I was just thinking about one of the things Abraham will say, there are at any given moment, at any time, there's always two groups of people. There's people plugged in and people pinched off. There's, and if I think about this, you'd have to be the kind of person who was plugged in order to access, I think, the essence of a vision like we're talking about. And what you plug into, I don't care if the semantics don't matter to me. It doesn't matter if you call it the universe or God or consciousness or energy. Some people are very scientific about it, but they can still get that everything is energy, and that there is if we go back to Wallace Wattles 100+ years ago and the science of getting rich, and there is a thinking substance, there's a thinking thing, there's a form to your thoughts, there's some thing beyond you that is trying to get expressed. And somehow you as a receptor picked up on it. You're like, agency seems important. And you tuned into something and you got it and others didn't. And you, in some ways, are choosing to be a steward of that. And to put dismiss the first three circles of essence, tipping point, and map, and go straight to plan, which planning is about timelines and measures and how are we doing? Are we in alignment, or are we calibrated to where we want to go? To do that before you ever get to essence, tipping point, or map is to miss the whole game.
Yeah.
And you won't be fulfilled, and your impact won't be made because you don't know where you're going.
Right. And or you have nowhere to go.
Right.
You just have nowhere to go because you haven't created the Not if you don't know where you're going, there's just no place to get to. So, all right, well, that's badass. All right, well,
Yeah.
so then, if we're talking, so the essence, so just to bring this back to some real world conversation. So here you
Bring
are.
us back down, please. Ground us, please.
Well, just so that it's a actual tangible thing, right? I would be tempted to go, okay, let's call it a session there, but that's only to avoid actually doing the work.
Mhm.
All right. So essence wise, people experience agency, right? Like that's
For you. Yeah. That's
for
your,
me, right? That's my
Mhm.
thing. People experience agency in life. And then, you know, a million people experience agency, a million, the map to that, like this,
Mhm.
right? Like what's a million who doing what,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Right.
Without answering that, then there's no
Right.
play, right? So then, you know, um,
And whatever the answer is to that, you couldn't get that done in 90 days, by the way. You know, like there'd be no 90-day thing you could do to get to a million in
right.
what's doing, who's doing
And
what's.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But if it was, you know, even if it was just, you know, a million people connected to, and just obviously brainstorming here, but a million people connected to and out in life, fulfilling on,
Mm.
I don't want to say their essence, but like their essence, like what matters to them.
Yeah.
You know, a million
Yeah.
people in action, having distinguished and created something that matters to them in the way that this matters to me.
Right.
Being connected to that is the tipping point. That's the who is people. And I don't know that I need, you know, it doesn't matter who.
Right.
I'm not people connected to and out in life in action, fulfilling on their essence.
Yeah. 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 And the more you sit with that, this is where it becomes a creation, because, and to me, it becomes art, because if you partner with something beyond yourself, you'll tune into ways that could look.
Right.
Like you might say, oh, you know what I want to do is this 90-day thing I do with agents in my level up. I want to take that structure, and I could see a million people in whatever walks of life they're in. I could see women who have been victims of domestic violence coming up with their own level up game and leading conversations for them. But I couldn't do, and you see how it'll start to snowball, because you'll be like, I couldn't do that for a million people. So I'm going to need some leaders. So what's my structure container? What's the map to develop leaders in these different walks of life so that the million get served and held and supported in the leveling up of, but anyway, you see what I'm saying? Like, this is how, and I think a lot of people get intimidated by, it would be too much. I'd have to create something completely new and whatever. And I go, most of the time, life has been preparing you for this work. And you already have experiences, skills, containers that if you just repurpose them for this legacy, they could hold what it is you want to build. You already have the structure, the support, the scaffolding for the impact you want to make, but you haven't repurposed it into a bigger context.
Right.
Or it could be something brand new, you know. But for me, what I know is I'm a social sciences guy. I'm not like a rocket sciences guy. I'm not a quantum physics guy. It's never going to be an algorithm for me.
Right.
It's always going to be people for me. And life has prepared me for that. And I can see how my million members of groundswell communities is a people thing. And building it with you and the other communities that I'm starting with other leaders who are into the woo-woo woods and want to stand for something like that. This is why I've distinguished the things I've distinguished, because I'm like, I can see this as my work, and I'm going down the road to distinguish the parts of this world.
Yeah, it's killer.
But it will always be people for me, because that's my wheelhouse. That's my lane. And every one of you listening to this have a lane.
Yeah. Well, for who, what's another lane? Because I mean, all I hear is people in my lane. So.
Right. Well, that makes sense because of you.
Right. But what's another lane?
Side note, this is just a side note. I think my tribe, people like us do things like this. I am a very people-oriented person, and most of the people that I attract and the people that I would be in these kinds of conversations with would be people-oriented people. They're just their heart is for people.
What's a track in which it's not people-oriented?
Well, I imagine if you're somebody who is into the singularity, maybe it's all about like, when AI and computers can speak fluent language and whatever, like the world will change, like somebody could have a premise that says, when technology catches up, the world would change. Or when food is a particular way, are people still the recipients of AI, or are people still the recipients of food? Sure. But maybe for them, the focus is just more on the thing than on the experience people are having. Like, when the world is able to create hydroponic farms to the tune of X amount of tons of produce per whatever, and not dependent on, whatever. And we have it's just like an atomic cloud that lasts for 2 years that kills off all the farms. But at least internally we have a hydroponic farm so we can still live. Like somebody could give their life to that could take more than their life to fulfill that vision of food for the world. Simon Sinek in The Infinite Game was talking about this dude in, I think it was in Russia. He was in World War II. He was creating this seed farm, this, and then Norway kind of adopted it and has one of the largest seed stores for all the seeds of the world. And that was a thing that was beyond him. And people have rallied around it because the vision was so grand and so important. It was total infinite game. And it would, obviously people would be the beneficiaries of that vision, but it wasn't people, it was seeds and food and whatever. Anyway.
All right. Well, okay. I don't know that we need to, as the thought I have about that is the essence of that game is still, people fed, or people are, nurtured. And then there's the map is one of the aspects of the map is a seed store. But the essence is people. I am going to argue that the essence is always,
but the challenge. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just thinking in terms of, what the essence is. Now, just given, okay, we're going to go back into the woo-woo-wood, so put on your boots. We were essence and we were made, we hold my beer, I'm going down, right?
Yeah.
The hold my beer, I'm going down is to have something happen for people.
Agreed.
Okay. So I don't think we're limiting. I don't think we're damaging the AI, the AI thinkers. I don't think we're limiting it to the way we think by saying, essence is going to have, is the difference you're going to make for people.
Right.
I don't even know that it's an important point. Actually, I don't know that it's a conceptual point.
Yeah. What is important to me though, as you bring that up though, is so thank you for bringing it up, is you could say the grand essence is for people, but what matters to me in each person finding their vision and legacy is that the essence is very specific to the things you're passionate about. So the essence, if we just said to everybody, hey, the essence is people, and they're like, great, I don't have to think about that one, let's move on to the tipping point, then you're missing the very thing that gives it life.
Fair enough.
So you have to find an essence that is specific to you. And if that's seeds, or if that's community, or if it's AI, algorithms, whatever, then you've got skin in the game.
Great. I got it. I got a different way of thinking about it than I came into it with. Okay, good. Well, then, than for me to stew around with 1 million people out in life, fulfilling on what matters to them, and the various ways that could look, 10 years from now, and then 3 years from now, and then the 1 degree shifts I could make today to see to it. That would be a useful, that could be next week, or that could be whatever, to continue to have this conversation inside that. But that's where this is going. So for people watching or listening, that's where this conversation is going, is inside, you listening, having what matters to you. Gamified inside a created infinite game.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Yeah. Right. And I guess I would also ground this conversation into the community we're building with. I think part of the benefit of, if this is interesting to you, you're like, I want my life, I have a legacy for my life, and I'd like it to live beyond me. Part of the benefit of community, of others having these conversations, is if you have not yet found it, it's being the essence, the tipping point, the map, any of that, that you can be in the conversation with others at different stages of this work and get something reflected, glean some perspective that you otherwise didn't have. And so it doesn't matter to us where you are in that forming of your important work. That part of the community is the benefiting of hearing where others are at. And so, and then I would say, as you form that, and once you come up with an infinite game you want to play, a plan inside of the map tipping point, in essence, a plan for it, then the community becomes this place where you can check in, and you can fine tune the plan and tweak the plan and call an audible on the plan, and just keep playing with the plan, right? Because that's what we do.
Bounce the plan off other people, so that what happens is you get to refine it, so that it continues to speak to you and to others, and you continue to take action on it.
Yeah. And resource the plan. Like, I think one of the real powers that I think it requires time, and it requires the community to grow, maybe sort of, is as you start to share parts of your plan, the others in the community can resource you. That I know somebody you should be talking to. There's somebody that is, their whole life is about this. You should talk to them. And now we've actually got, some exponential opportunities, because because you aren't being a maverick. You're being resourced by a greater community, walking each other home in important work.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really cool.
All right. Well, from the beach.
From the beach. Yeah. Peace. Yeah.
Peace.
Thanks, Aaron. Good stuff today.
All right, man. Great.